His laugh rang through the courtroom like a knife twisting in my chest. Brendan actually laughed right there, in front of the judge, in front of everyone. My husband of 8 years threw his head back and laughed at me. His lawyer had just finished explaining why I was an unfit mother. The judge had just given him temporary full custody of our 2 children. And Brendan Holloway, the man I had given everything to, leaned over and whispered to me that I would be lucky to see my kids twice a month, only with supervision, like I was some kind of criminal, like I was dangerous. The mother who had rocked those babies to sleep every single night, who remembered every food allergy, every nightmare, every favorite bedtime story. That mother was now being treated like a threat. And my husband laughed. I, Amelia Salinas. I was 34 years old when my whole world fell apart in a California courtroom. 34 years old, married for 8 years, mother to Marisol, who was 7, and Theo, who was almost 6, with his birthday coming up in just 2 months. 34 years old, and suddenly I had nothing. No home, no children, no savings, nothing. Except the clothes I was wearing and a used Toyota that sounded like it was auditioning for a horror movie every time I turned the ignition. My mechanic once told me the car wasn't broken. It was just expressing itself. I couldn't afford a second opinion. Let me tell you how I got there. And more importantly, let me tell you what happened next. I met Brendan when I was 25. He was charming and ambitious, climbing fast at a tech company in San Diego. I was working as a medical billing specialist at a hospital. Good, steady work that I was proud of. My parents were immigrants my parents taught me that hard work and honesty were the most important things in America. Keep your head down, do your job, treat people right, and everything will work out. I believe that. I really do. Brendan swept me off my feet. Fancy dinners. Weekend trips. He told me I was beautiful, that I was the woman he had been searching for his whole life. We got married when I was 26, and Marisol came a year later. Theo came 2 years after that. Life was good. Life was exactly what I had dreamed it would be. When the kids were little, Brendan suggested I reduce my work hours. Just go part-time, he said, for the family. The kids need you home more. I can provide for us. And because I trusted him completely, because I thought we were building something together, I agreed. I went part-time. I managed the household. I raised our children. I supported his career while he climbed higher and higher. What I didn't know was that Brendan had been planning to leave me since before Theo was even born. He gave me an allowance, like a teenager. Every month, a set amount appeared in my personal account, and that was supposed to cover groceries, kids' activities, my gas, everything. If I needed more, I had to ask. I had to explain. And I never questioned it because I trusted my husband. My parents had a traditional marriage where my father handled the money, and I thought that's just how things worked. I was a fool. A complete fool. If I could go back and talk to that younger version of myself, I would shake her by the shoulders. But hindsight is 20/20ths, and foresight is apparently legally blind. The divorce papers arrived at my workplace. Not at home, where I might have had some privacy. Not through the mail, where I could have processed it alone. No. A process server walked into the hospital billing department and called out my name in front of everyone. My co-workers watched as I was handed documents that destroyed my life. Brendan did that on purpose. Maximum humiliation. That should have told me everything about who he really was. But it got worse. Much worse. His lawyer painted me as mentally unstable, neglectful, overwhelmed, and incapable of caring for my own children. Every small moment of exhaustion that every mother experiences was twisted into proof that I was incompetent. That time Marisol fell off her bike while I was distracted with Theo. That time I forgot to sign a permission slip. That time I cried at a school event because I was having a hard week. All of it documented. All of it saved. Brendan had been building a case against me for 18 months while I was busy loving him and raising his children. And he was not working alone. His mother, Constance Holloway, had been helping him the entire time. That woman had smiled at me across holiday dinner tables while secretly recording every mistake I made. She offered to babysit so she could watch how the children behaved with me versus without me. She photographed my messy kitchen, my unfolded laundry, my tired face, building a file, building a weapon. Constance was the kind of woman who could find fault with a sunrise. Too orange, too slow, not enough vitamin D. But the betrayal that hurt me the most did not come from Constance Holloway. It came from my own blood. My sister Paloma testified against me. My baby sister, the one I had protected our entire childhood. My sister, the one I had loaned money to, who had cried on my shoulder through 3 bad breakups, who I had always considered my best friend. Paloma sat in that witness chair and told the court that I was always overwhelmed, that I was short-tempered with the kids, that she worried about my mental state. She said those words while looking at the floor, refusing to meet my eyes, and I felt something inside me break. I later found out that Paloma had been dating one of Brendan's colleagues. She wanted to stay in their good graces. She sold me out for a man and some nice dinner reservations. My lawyer was court-appointed because I could not afford anything else. Brendan's lawyer wore a watch that probably cost more than my car. Considering my car's main feature was sounding like it was being murdered every time I started it, that was not a high bar. My lawyer was overworked, underprepared, and clearly outmatched. She did her best, but her best was not enough. The temporary custody order gave Brendan everything. The children would stay in the family home, the $600,000 oceanside house I had helped pay for, decorated, cleaned, and filled with love. That house was now his. I was ordered to find another place to live and could only petition for visitation once I was settled. I moved into a studio apartment so small I had to go outside to change my mind. The real estate listing probably called it cozy and efficient. Real estate agents could make a prison cell sound like a spa retreat. 1 room, 1 window, and a bathroom where the shower was directly above the toilet because there wasn't enough space to separate them. This was my life now. This was. This was what 8 years of marriage and devotion had earned me. But something happened during that terrible court hearing. Something I almost missed because I was so destroyed by everything else happening around me. It was just a moment, a flicker. Brendan handed a folder to his lawyer, and the lawyer quickly slipped it into his briefcase, glancing around the room like he was checking if anyone noticed. When the financial disclosure documents were presented, something about the numbers felt wrong. Brendan's income was listed as $140,000 per year. But I remembered conversations. I remembered him bragging about bonuses and stock options. I remembered a lifestyle that didn't match those numbers. At the time, I was too broken to think clearly, but that seed was planted. That tiny suspicion stayed in my mind, waiting. Before we continue, if you are enjoying the story, please subscribe and tell me in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is there. I see every single comment, and they mean the world to me. Thank you so much for your support. The weeks after that court hearing were the darkest of my life. Brendan used the custody arrangement like a weapon. Every single visitation became a battle. I would drive 45 minutes to pick up the kids. When I arrived, Brendan would meet me at the door with an apologetic shrug. "Sorry," he would say. "Marisol woke up with a stomach ache. Better if she stays home today. Or Theo has a playdate that just came up. Maybe next weekend." Next weekend. Always next weekend. And when next weekend came, there was always another excuse. The few times I did get to see my children, something had changed in them. Marisol, my bright and my chatty little girl, Marisol, was quiet and distant. She would answer my questions with one-word responses and spend most of our time together staring at her tablet. Theo was worse. My baby boy would cry and cling to me, asking why Mommy had left them, why Mommy didn't want to live with them anymore. "Who told you that, baby?" I would ask. But I already knew the answer. Brendan was turning my children against me. Every night in that house, He filled their heads with lies. Mommy chose to leave. Mommy doesn't want you. Mommy is sick and cannot take care of you properly. He was slowly erasing me from their lives, one bedtime story at a time. And Constance Holloway made sure everyone knew about it. She treated social media like her personal victory parade. Every other day there was a new post, photos of her with my children at the zoo, at the beach, at restaurants. #Grandma of the Year, #blessed, #family first. She had moved into my house to help Brendan, which really meant she was there to finish erasing me. I wondered if she was also teaching my children that passive aggression was a love language. About a month after the court hearing, she sent me a private message. Just a few sentences I will never forget. She wrote that I was never good enough for her son, that everyone could see it except me, that my children deserved better than a mother like me. I stared at those words on my phone for an hour, reading them over and over, wondering if maybe she was right. Meanwhile, Paloma had fully joined the whole family. She appeared in Constance's social media posts, smiling in my kitchen, playing with my children in my backyard. She received gifts, a new car, and her credit card debt mysteriously paid off. Our mother was caught in the middle, heartbroken, not. She couldn't understand how her two daughters had ended up on opposite sides of a war. My financial situation was crushing me. Brendan's lawyer filed motion after motion to delay spousal support, temporary orders, continuances, requests for more documents. Every legal trick possible to keep money out of my hands while I was drowning. I worked double shifts at the hospital just to pay rent and buy food. I stopped eating breakfast and lunch to save money. I told myself it was intermittent fasting for my health, but the truth was my wallet was on life support. 1 month, I sold my grandmother's gold bracelet, the only piece of jewelry that truly mattered to me, just to make rent. Then I discovered something even worse. Brendan had opened credit cards in my name during our marriage. Cards I never knew about. He had maxed them out and stopped making payments. My credit score was destroyed. I couldn't get approved for a better apartment, a car loan, anything. He hadn't just taken my present. He had sabotaged my future. Work became another battlefield. About 2 months after the divorce, a new supervisor showed up in my department. Her name was Regina Doyle. From day one, she treated me like something she had stepped on. My schedule was changed without warning. I was written up for being 3 minutes late after working a 12-hour shift. My hours were cut from part-time to barely surviving. At first, I thought it was just bad luck. Then a coworker mentioned seeing Regina at a charity event, standing with Constance Holloway, laughing together like old friends. There are no coincidences. Brendan's reach stretched into every corner of my life. I was starting to think he had some kind of evil villain checklist and he seemed to be working through it one cruel step at a time. The absolute lowest point came on a Saturday in March, Theo's 6th birthday. I begged for visitation that day. Begged. I offered to come early or stay late, to do whatever Brendan wanted. I just wanted to see my son on his birthday. Brendan's lawyer sent a formal response, saying no because of scheduling conflicts with the planned celebration. So I did something I'm not proud of. I drove to the house, my house, the house where I had brought both my babies home from the hospital. I parked across the street and just watched. Through the windows, I could see balloons and streamers. I saw children running around in party hats. I saw Constance carrying a huge birthday cake toward the dining room. And I saw my son, my Theo, surrounded by people, celebrating without me. I sat in my car, eating gas station snacks for dinner, watching my son's birthday party through a window like some kind of suburban ghost. I cried the kind of cry where you can't breathe, where your whole body shakes. The kind of crying that comes from so deep inside, you didn't even know that place existed. Then Brendan saw me. He came outside with his phone already in his hand, already calling someone. The police arrived 20 minutes later. The officer was polite but firm. I wasn't doing anything illegal by parking on a public street, but Brendan claimed I was stalking and harassing his family. The officer suggested I leave before things got worse. So I left. I drove back to my studio apartment, with its view of a brick wall, and wondered if this was going to be the rest of my life. The following week, Brendan's lawyer filed for a restraining order against me. A restraining order against a mother who only wanted to see her children on her son's birthday. The paperwork described me as erratic, unstable, and potentially dangerous. It asked that I be banned from coming within 500 feet of the family home, the children's school, and Brendan's workplace. I was about to lose everything, not just my house and my money, but any chance of ever being a real mother to my children again. Brendan was going to win completely, and there was nothing I could do about it. Or so I thought. That weekend, I went to my mother's house for dinner. She had tried to stay neutral between me and Paloma, but I could see the pain in her eyes. Her 2 daughters torn apart. Her grandchildren kept from her because she refused to choose a side. After dinner, she mentioned that she had been cleaning out the garage. She had found some old boxes, things I had stored there years ago when Brendan and I moved into our house and didn't have enough closet space. She asked if I wanted to take them or if she should donate everything. I wasn't in the mood to go through old memories, but something made me say yes. I loaded 3 dusty boxes into my Toyota and drove them back to my tiny apartment. That night, I opened them, expecting old clothes, maybe some books, forgotten wedding gifts. Instead, I found a plain black external hard drive. I had completely forgotten about it. In the early years of our marriage, when Theo was just a baby, I used to help Brendan with his home office work, filing papers, organizing receipts, sometimes backing up his computer when he was too busy. I had copied many of his files onto this drive as a backup. Then life got hectic. I put it in a box and forgot it existed. I had never thought about it again. I almost threw it away without checking it. Almost. But something made me plug it into my laptop, and what I found changed everything. The hard drive held thousands of files going back 6 years. Spreadsheets, emails, bank statements, legal documents. At first, I didn't understand what I was seeing. The numbers were confusing. The language was full of business terms I barely recognized. But the deeper I looked, the clearer the picture became. Brendan had a secret. 6 years ago, right around the time Theo was born, my husband had created a limited liability company. An LLC with a boring, generic name that meant nothing to me. But according to those files, that company had been receiving large payments every single month. Consulting fees, the invoices said. The money came directly from his employer. But those payments never showed up in our joint bank accounts. They never appeared on the tax returns I had signed. That money went somewhere else entirely. I am not a financial expert. Numbers have never been my strength. I once balanced my checkbook wrong and convinced myself I was rich for 3 beautiful hours before reality hit me. But even I could see that something was very wrong. I spent the entire night going through files, taking notes, trying to understand how much Brendan had hidden. By morning, I had a rough estimate. Over 6 years, Brendan had funneled at least $850,000 through that LLC. $850,000 I never knew existed. $850,000 that was never disclosed during our divorce. But that wasn't even the worst part. I found emails, conversations between Brendan and his lawyer, dating back years. Years before he ever served me with divorce papers. In one email, his lawyer clearly discussed how to keep the LLC hidden during the eventual divorce. Those words hit me hard, the eventual divorce. Brendan had been planning to leave me while I was still nursing his son. While I was waking up at 3 in the morning for feedings, living on no sleep and cold coffee, my husband was planning how to hide money from me. This wasn't a man who simply fell out of love and wanted to move on. This was careful, planned financial fraud. I needed help, real, professional help. But I could barely afford groceries, let alone forensic accountants and lawyers. I was close to giving up, accepting that knowing the truth wasn't the same as being able to use it. Then I remembered someone from work. Her name was Beverly Okonkwo. She worked in a different department now, but years ago, she had been some kind of financial investigator. I had heard rumors that she left that career because of burnout, that she had seen too much corporate ugliness and needed a change. We weren't close friends, but she had always been kind to me. She was one of the few co-workers who didn't treat me differently after my very public divorce. I asked if I could buy her coffee. She said yes. We sat in a corner booth at a diner near the hospital. I told her everything, the divorce, the custody battle, the hard drive. I showed her screenshots of the spreadsheets and emails on my phone. I expected her to say it was complicated. That she wasn't sure what it meant. That I should talk to a professional. Instead, Beverly looked at the files and let out a low whistle. She set her coffee cup down and stared at me for a long moment. Then she said she hadn't seen books this cooked since her cousin tried to do her own taxes after 3 glasses of wine. Then Beverly got serious. She told me this wasn't just hidden assets. This was fraud. Over the next 2 weeks, Beverly helped me understand exactly what Brendan had done. She worked after hours, using skills she thought she had left behind, tracing the money through different accounts. What she uncovered was even worse than I had imagined. The LLC owned property. A vacation condo in Lake Tahoe, a place I had never heard of, never seen, never knew existed. It was worth about $400,000. While I was selling my grandmother's jewelry just to make rent, my husband was sitting on a secret vacation home. 4 bedrooms. A lake view. A hot tub on the deck. The audacity of it made my blood boil. But there was more. The LLC had been making monthly payments to Constance Holloway, listed as consulting fees for administrative services. Over 4 years, those payments totaled $72,000. Constance Holloway, who had never done administrative work in her life. Constance Holloway, who spent her days posting on social media, shopping, and apparently committing tax fraud. Those payments were clearly fake. They were designed to move money to his mother while creating false tax deductions. That wasn't just hiding money from a spouse. That was tax fraud involving his entire family. My relationship with money changed forever after that. I realized that no matter how much you trust someone, you must understand your own finances. Now I keep emergency savings in my own name only. Money I control completely. Trust is beautiful, but verification is survival. Beverly then connected me with a former colleague of hers, a forensic accountant named Harrison Wells. Harrison looked at the evidence once and agreed to work with me on delayed payment. He said cases like this were exactly why Harrison then connected me with a family law attorney named Diana Prescott, who specialized in divorce fraud cases. She worked on contingency for situations exactly like mine. Diana was a small woman with sharp eyes and absolutely no patience for nonsense. She reminded me of a terrier, small, but completely unwilling to let go once she had something in her teeth. She reviewed everything Beverly and Harrison had uncovered. She asked about 50 questions. Then she leaned back in her chair with what I can only describe as a predatory smile. She told me the evidence wasn't just enough to reopen my case. It was enough to destroy Brendan completely. But then she said something that surprised me. We couldn't rush straight to court. We needed to be strategic. We needed Brendan to feel safe, confident, like he had already won. We needed him to lie under oath about assets he believed no one knew existed. We needed him to commit perjury. We needed to set a trap. For the first time in months, I felt something other than despair. I felt a small flicker of hope. And underneath that hope, something else began to grow, something that had been buried under grief and humiliation. I was getting angry. While Harrison continued his forensic work, he uncovered even more. Credit card statements showed purchases that made no sense for Brendan's claimed lifestyle. Expensive jewelry I had never received. Hotel bookings in San Francisco on weekends he said he was at conferences. There were also monthly payments going to a personal account belonging to a woman named Kendra Whitmore. Harrison tracked down Kendra Whitmore. He found her social media profile, carefully set to private, with only one public photo visible. It was a pregnancy announcement, 7 months along, posted just 3 weeks earlier. Brendan had a girlfriend. Based on the payment records, he had probably been with her for at least 2 years. And now she was pregnant with his child. My husband had sat in that courtroom and called me an unfit mother while his mistress was carrying his baby. He had said I was unstable while secretly building an entire second life. He had laughed at me while betraying me in ways I was only beginning to understand. The woman I was 8 months ago would have collapsed after seeing that photo. The woman I was becoming simply added it to the file. Just another piece of evidence. Just another nail in his coffin. Diana Prescott laid out the plan. We would file a motion to modify custody. We would also file a separate motion to set aside the original divorce judgment based on fraud. But our first filing would look weak. Routine. Easy to defeat. We would let Brendan believe I was making one last desperate attempt before giving up forever. And then, we would spring the trap. Diana Prescott was a master strategist. She explained that Brendan's greatest weakness was his arrogance. He believed he was the smartest person in every room. He believed he had hidden everything perfectly. He believed I was too broken and too stupid to ever fight back. We were going to use that arrogance against him. The first step was making our legal filings look pathetic. Diana wrote a motion to modify custody that focused on emotion instead of hard evidence. She wrote about how much I missed my children. How the current arrangement was hurting them emotionally. How I deserved another chance. It sounded like a desperate plea from a woman who had nothing left except her feelings. Exactly what we wanted Brendan to see. The second step was harder. I had to act completely defeated. Diana coached me on exactly what to say if I ran into anyone connected to Brendan. I would casually mention that I was thinking about moving back to Texas to be closer to extended family. Maybe it was time to accept that California held too many painful memories. I let that information slip to my mother, knowing she would mention it to Palomar, and knowing Palomar would run straight to Brendan. I practiced my defeated expression in the bathroom mirror so many times that my reflection started to look genuinely worried for me. Method acting at its finest. The trap was set. All I had to do was look like a woman who had given up. At the same time, I had a smaller battle to fight. Regina Doyle had been making my work life miserable for months. Every shift brought a new humiliation. But now I understood something important. Nothing in my life was coincidence anymore. So I started documenting everything. Every schedule change without proper notice. Every write-up for small mistakes that other employees got away with every day. Every time she singled me out in front of co-workers. I built a file, just like Brendan had built one on me. But mine was based on truth. Then I filed a formal complaint with Human Resources. I included proof of Regina's connection to Constance Holloway, social media photos of them together at charity events, and a screenshot of Constance thanking Regina for being such a wonderful friend during difficult family times. The message was clear. Regina wasn't just a bad supervisor. She was part of a coordinated harassment effort. HR took it seriously. Very seriously. Within 2 weeks, Regina Doyle was quietly transferred to a different department across town. My hours were restored. My schedule stabilized. It was a small victory, but it taught me something important. I was capable of fighting back. And I was capable of winning. Regina probably thought she was untouchable because of her fancy friends. It turns out fancy friends do not mean much when you leave a paper trail of workplace violations a mile long. The restraining order hearing came next. Brendan's lawyer painted me as an unstable woman who had stalked her own family on a child's birthday. Diana responded with evidence showing that Brendan had been systematically denying my legal visitation rights for months. She proved that his harassment claims were really attempts to control and punish me for trying to see my own children. The judge reviewed the evidence carefully and dismissed the restraining order petition. Brendan looked annoyed, but not worried. He still believed he was winning the war. Then came the deposition. For anyone unfamiliar, a deposition is when lawyers ask questions under oath before a trial. Everything you say is recorded and can be used against you later. Diana scheduled Brendan's deposition as part of our custody modification request. She told him it was routine, just standard procedure in any custody case. Brendan showed up wearing an expensive suit, accompanied by an expensive lawyer, carrying complete confidence that he had already won. His lawyer was probably charging $500 an hour to sit there and look impressive. Nice work if you can get it. Diana began with gentle questions. Easy questions. She asked about his income, his assets, his overall financial situation. She asked whether he owned any businesses or had any business interests outside his main job. No, Brendan said, just my salary and standard benefits. Diana asked if he owned any property other than the family home. No, Brendan said. Just the oceanside house. She asked whether he had any financial relationships with family members, any payments or transfers to relatives. No, Brendan replied. Nothing like that. Every single answer was a lie. Every single answer was perjury. And every single answer was recorded, documented, and certified. Brendan's lawyer looked bored throughout the deposition. He hadn't prepared, because he didn't think he needed to. He didn't know about the hard drive. He didn't know about Beverly and Harrison. And he didn't know that his client had just destroyed himself under oath. After the deposition, Diana and I reviewed the recording together. She wore the expression of a cat that had just cornered a very large, very slow mouse. We have him, she said. Completely. Now all that remained was preparing for the final battle. But there was one more thing I needed to do first, something personal. If this story is resonating with you, I would truly appreciate it if you'd hit the subscribe button. Your support keeps me going and means more than you know. I went to see Paloma, not at her apartment, where she could refuse to open the door. I found her at a coffee shop she visited often, a place we used to go together back when we were actually sisters. She looked up from her phone and saw me standing there. Her face cycled through about 15 different emotions in 2 seconds. I sat down across from her without asking. I took out my phone and showed her the emails. The emails where Brendan and his colleague discussed how to use her. The emails where they referred to her as a useful idiot. Those exact words. Idiot. The emails showed how easily she was manipulated. The emails showed her boyfriend promised to dump her once he got his promotion and she was no longer needed. Paloma read the emails and started to cry. Not delicate tears, ugly, messy, snot running down her face crying. She kept saying I'm sorry over and over. But I didn't want her apologies. I wanted her to understand what she had done. I told her she had testified against her own sister for a man who was using her. I told her she had helped take children away from their mother in exchange for dinner reservations and a new car. I told her our grandmother would be ashamed of her, and I watched those words hit her like a physical blow. Then I told her she had a choice. She could continue down the path she had chosen, living in the hallways of lies and pretending everything was fine. Or she could tell the truth. She could sign an affidavit admitting that she was coached, that she was pressured, that she was promised rewards for her testimony. She could try to make things right. Paloma chose the truth. 2 days later, I had her sworn affidavit. It described exactly how Brendan and his lawyer had prepared her testimony, what they told her to say, what to emphasize, and how they promised her boyfriend would stay with her if she cooperated. It was devastating evidence of witness tampering, and it was going to blow their case apart. The week before the hearing, Diana and I did our final preparations. We had the forensic accounting report documenting every hidden dollar. We had the property records for the Lake Tahoe condo. We had bank statements showing payments to Constance Holloway. We had evidence of the affair with Kendra Whitmore and her pregnancy. We had proof that Brendan had committed perjury in his deposition. We had Paloma's affidavit about being coached. We had everything we needed. The night before the hearing, I could not sleep. I stood at the window of my tiny studio apartment, staring at the brick wall that had been my view for 8 months. I thought about everything that had led to this moment, the girl who trusted too easily, the wife who never questioned, the mother who lost everything. I was not that woman anymore. I had been broken, yes, but I had rebuilt myself into something stronger. Tomorrow, Brendan Holloway would learn what happens when you underestimate someone you tried to destroy. The courtroom felt different now. The last time I had been here, I was a broken woman watching her life collapse. Today, I was something else entirely. Brendan arrived with his lawyer, carrying a thin folder. They hadn't prepared for anything except an easy victory. Constance Holloway sat behind them, wearing pearls and a satisfied smile. Then I walked in with Diana Prescott, carrying 3 thick folders and a banker's box. Behind us was Harrison Wells with his forensic accounting report. Brendan's smirk flickered when he noticed the folders. Diana's opening was brief: evidence of fraud in the original divorce proceedings, deliberately falsified financial disclosures, grounds to set aside the judgment and reconsider custody. Harrison Wells testified first. He traced Brendan's hidden LLC, the monthly transfers disguised as consulting fees, all concealed from marital assets, a total of $862,000. But he wasn't finished. Property records for a Lake Tahoe condo, 4 bedrooms, Lakeview, purchased through the LLC for $380,000. A vacation home hidden throughout our marriage. Entire marriage and divorce. Then the payments to Constance Holloway, $72,000 for administrative services that were never performed. Tax fraud implicating both of them. Diana played the recording of Brendan's deposition, his own voice. Do you own any businesses outside your primary employment? No. Any property other than the family home? No. Any financial relationships with family members? No. Lie after lie, in his own words. Brendan's lawyer requested a recess. He was furious. He had walked into what he thought was an easy case and discovered that his client had committed multiple felonies and lied to him about it. Next, Diana presented evidence about Kendra Whitmore. Credit card statements showing jewelry, hotel stays, romantic dinners, and monthly payments totaling $60,000 over 2 years. And the pregnancy announcement, 7 months pregnant, conceived while Brendan was still married to me and fighting for custody. Brendan started shouting that his personal life wasn't relevant. The judge warned him to control himself. Then Diana called Paloma Salinas, my sister. She testified that Brendan and his lawyer had coached her before the original custody hearing. They told her to emphasize anytime I seemed tired or stressed, portraying normal parenting as concerning behavior. They promised her boyfriend a promotion if she cooperated. She looked at me and said she was deeply sorry for what she had done. Constance Holloway couldn't stay quiet. She stood up and shouted at Paloma, "Traitor! Liar!" The judge warned her, but she ignored him. When Diana presented the tax fraud evidence directly implicating Constance, she completely lost control. She tried to approach the bench, screaming that I had fabricated everything. The judge ordered the bailiff to remove her. Constance Holloway was escorted out, still shouting, her carefully crafted public image completely shattered. I watched her leave and felt nothing. She had become irrelevant. Diana delivered her closing statement: fraud, perjury, hidden assets, witness tampering, parental alienation. She requested that the original judgment be set aside, custody transferred to me, the family home awarded as compensation, and the matter referred to the district attorney for criminal investigation. The judge said she had seen enough. She called for a 1-hour recess to review the evidence and prepare her ruling. Brendan's lawyer was already on his phone as he walked out, probably calling his malpractice insurance to warn them that a very bad day was about to get worse. Brendan sat alone at the defendant's table, staring straight ahead at nothing, looking like a man watching his entire life collapse in real time. The man who had laughed at me in this same courtroom 8 months ago could not even lift his head. 1 hour later, the judge returned with her ruling. She began by stating that in her 22 years on the bench, she had rarely seen such egregious misconduct in a divorce case. She said the evidence of fraud was overwhelming and indisputable. She said the perjury committed during the deposition was a serious criminal matter that would be referred to the district attorney's office for prosecution. Then she delivered the judgment. Custody of both minor children, Marisol and Theo, was immediately and fully transferred to me. Physical custody, legal custody, everything. Brendan would receive supervised visitation twice per month, pending investigation of the parental alienation allegations. The same arrangement he had tried to force on me. The same humiliation he had wanted me to suffer. The family home in Oceanside was awarded to me. The judge found that the house had been paid for with marital income that Brendan had fraudulently concealed. Therefore, I was entitled to it as restitution for the fraud. The house I had decorated, the house I had cleaned, the house I had filled with love and lost, it was mine again. A full forensic accounting was ordered of all assets connected to Brendan's LLC, the Lake Tahoe property, and any other hidden accounts. Preliminary estimates suggested I would receive at least 70% of all discovered assets, plus damages for the fraud itself. Brendan was ordered to pay all of my legal fees and forensic accounting costs. Every dollar I had spent fighting for my children would come out of his pocket. Every hour Diana had worked, every calculation Harrison had made, every document Beverly had analyzed, he would pay for all of it. Child support was recalculated based on his actual income, not the fake numbers he had disclosed. The monthly amount was nearly triple what he had originally been ordered to pay. Finally, the matter was referred to the district attorney for criminal perjury charges and to the State Bar Association to investigate his attorney's potential involvement in concealing fraud. Brendan sat completely still as the judge read each item. His face went from white to grey to a colourless blank. His expensive suit suddenly looked too big, like he had shrunk inside it. His lawyer was already packing his briefcase, not even pretending to be part of the case anymore. When the judge finished, she looked directly at Brendan. She told him she hoped he understood the consequences of his choices, that he had not just committed financial crimes, but had tried to destroy the relationship between his children and their mother. She said that in her experience, people who behaved like him rarely found happiness because they carried their dishonesty wherever they went. Then she adjourned the hearing. I stood up on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. Diana shook my hand and told me we had one. Harrison Wells nodded at me with professional satisfaction, but I could barely process any of it. 8 months of fighting. 8 months of surviving on nothing. 8 months of crying alone in a studio apartment with a view of a brick wall. And now it was over. As I walked toward the door, Brendan finally spoke. He asked if we could work something out. His voice was small, nothing like the confident man who had laughed at me in this same courtroom 8 months ago. He said he was sure we could find a reasonable compromise. He said he would give me whatever I wanted if we could just keep this out of criminal court. I did not answer him. I did not even look at him. I just kept walking. My children were waiting in the hallway with my mother. The court had arranged for them to be brought from school so they could go home with me immediately. Marisol saw me first. She stood frozen for a moment, uncertain. I realized how much damage Brendan's lies had done. 8 months of being told that Mommy left them, 8 months of being taught to doubt me. Then Theo spotted me and broke into a run, slamming into my legs with enough force to nearly knock me over. "Mommy," he said. "Are we going home with you?" "Yes, baby," I told him. "We are going home." Marisol walked over slowly, still cautious. But when I knelt down and opened my arms, Marisol came to me. She buried her face in my shoulder and whispered that she knew I had not left them. She knew Daddy was lying. She had known the whole time, but she did not know how to say it. I held both my children in that courthouse hallway and let myself cry for the first time since this nightmare began. But these were different tears. These were not tears of despair. These were tears of relief, of victory, of a mother who had fought through everything to get her children back. Everything unraveled quickly after that. Kendra Whitmore left Brendan within a week of the hearing when she realized the money was gone and criminal charges were coming. Apparently, love only lasts as long as the credit card works. Constance Holloway received her own letter from the IRS about the fraudulent consulting payments. Last I heard, she deleted all her social media accounts. No more #blessed for her. Brendan's lawyer withdrew from the case and faced his own bar investigation for potentially helping conceal the fraud. And Brendan himself, last I heard, updated his dating profile to say he was going through some life changes, which I suppose is technically accurate if you count potential prison time and losing everything you ever had as life changes. 3 weeks after the hearing, I stood in the doorway of my home. My home. The home I had lost and won back. I watched my children playing in the backyard. The same yard where I had taught Marisol to ride a bike. The same yard where I had pushed Theo on his swing for hours. My mother was in the kitchen making dinner. Paloma was there too, tentatively rebuilding what she had broken. We were not okay yet, my sister and I. The trust she had destroyed would take years to rebuild, if it ever could be rebuilt completely. But we were trying. Family is complicated. Forgiveness is harder. But we were taking it one day at a time. The sun was setting over Oceanside, painting everything gold and pink. I thought about the woman I had been a year ago. The woman who trusted blindly and questioned nothing. The woman who let herself be controlled because she thought that was love. That woman was gone. The strongest revenge is not destroying someone who hurt you. The strongest revenge is rebuilding everything they tried to take and making it better than they ever could have imagined. Brendan Holloway had laughed at me in court. He had told me I would never see my children again. He had thought he had won. He was wrong. Thank you so much for watching. More of my most gripping stories are already on your screen. Click one now and do not miss the best part. You will love it. See you in the next one.